all the way to the final, to be honest. Yeah. I believe in my county, and I suppose they're good at football. They just have to believe in themselves.
I love playing 12, I love playing 10. I love being on the pitch, to be honest.
Are you confident?
Absolutely not.
No!
Thank you for all the supporters. Thank you for the team. Thank you, France. Merci la France. Merci les baguettes. Merci les croissants. Je vous aime. I love you.
Hello. Happy Thursday. It is almost the end of the week. It's actually the end of my week, thank God. But welcome along to Word on the Street, where every week we take a sporting topic, something that's dominating the headlines, and we take it to the public and we find out what you think. So this week we are chatting all things F1 as Irish driver Alex Dunne is back on the top of the leaderboard in the F2 after, we could say, a dramatic couple of weeks. So here is Ep.7 and we're calling it Formula Dunn. So, Eve, you are back from gallivanting in Barcelona at the weekend. You left us here all on our own. We did have Colm, but we were in absolute struggle street.
My back is broken from carrying this podcast last week.
I was scared. I was scared I'd come back and I'd see Colm sitting in my seat, so I'm glad it's still here.
He did fill in well. I was in a dark place. Rachel was stressed to the nigh because I put all the responsibility on her. Literally everything. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It was a good learning experience for me, Susanna.
Yeah, I think Colm carried it well. And, you know,
yeah.
I thought the episode was good.
You're lucky to be let back in.
Exactly. Well, I listened to the episode on a sunbed in my hotel in Barcelona.
Rub it in, why don't you?
I know. But yeah, I'm just back from Barcelona. I went to the Spanish Grand Prix in the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya.
Oh, very good.
My pronunciation is shocking, so I
thought that was pretty good.
It's my second Grand Prix I've ever been to. I went to Silverstone, the British Grand Prix in 2022. So it's been 3 years since I've been.
Why'd you choose Barcelona?
It's way cheaper. Silverstone, when I went in 22, the tickets were like 250 quid. This year they were 350. So I said no, because we got to Barcelona, me and my friends, for less than 200 quid for the 3 days.
That's incredible, including the tickets.
The flights, I used my handy Ryanair vouchers that I get every Christmas. And that's the only thing I ask for every Christmas is Ryanair vouchers.
That's actually a really clever gift. I've never thought to ask for that.
It's dead handy. And then the tickets were €200. Hotel was, not. We stayed a wee bit out from the city, but the public transport is incredible in Barcelona. So it was way more affordable than going to Silverstone, which is in the middle of nowhere, in this town called Toaster in the UK. Yeah.
I would like to live in Toaster. Okay, well, tell us how, you're obviously an F1 fan. You've been to two more. Actually, no, I have been once. I worked at the Abu Dhabi one when I used to live there.
Just casual flex.
Yeah, casual flex. I do have a Red Bull and a Mercedes top lying about somewhere from that time. But anyway, purposefully, I haven't been to any F1 circuits. So you've been to two more than I have, and two more than Rachel, I think.
No, I went to one in Melbourne. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Look, we all have different backstories, don't we?
We do. We're learning about each other every week, which is nice.
And did you like it?
No. No. I went, everyone was talking about it, living in Melbourne at the time, saying it's such great crack, you get to see these cars going at the speed of light. We arrived and we just had general admission tickets, because the tickets for the stand are astronomical. Meow. And then you just see a blur and everyone is going mad. But they're looking at the screens to see what's going on. It's the only live sporting event I've been to where it's better not to be at it. Yeah. Because people don't know what's going on.
But the blur of the is so exciting.
It's not, okay. Eve. I could do that, myself. Yeah.
That's a flex.
Yeah, everyone's it's so loud. It wasn't that loud. And I know we'll probably come to that later on talking about the engines, but everyone had their phones out to check who was actually winning because you can't really tell. And everyone's looking at the screens. So it's what is the point of actually being here? It was fun. I had a good time, but it had nothing to do with anything that was going on the track.
No, I do agree, to be fair. The one time I went, I was not on a corner or anything. So all I saw was new every 5 minutes. Well, maybe more as they went past that section. But you were saying earlier that in Barcelona you secured a spot on a corner that you knew in advance, did you, that there was going to be some action there?
Yeah, so basically, like you, we had general admission tickets. So the circuit in Barcelona, it's all kind of built on a hill. So when you're sitting on the grass, you get a great view kind of wherever you are. But we wanted to make sure that we were at a place where we could, the norms had like a purpose, and we could see, you know, some drama happening. So we sat at turn 5, and for the F1 race itself, it was perfect because only three big things happened in the F1 race at the weekend, and that was Fernando Alonso, who's the kind of not local, he's not from Barcelona, but he's Spanish. He's so popular there. The atmosphere was incredible. He went off at our corner into the gravel, and everyone thought that he was going to kind of DNF and go out, and he got back on the track. That was a very dramatic moment. The other big thing that happened is that Max Verstappen and George Russell had a crash, not a big crash. They touched wheels, and Verstappen definitely turned in on him, and he got a 10-second time penalty for that. But that happened at our corner as well. And the whole stand, because you saw what happened right in front of you, the whole stand beside us and all of us on the hill, it was this huge kind of inhale of, oh my God, what's happening? And then the only thing we didn't see at our corner was Kimi Antonelli going off and causing a safety car. But, you know, considering we didn't buy grandstand tickets, and you're fighting for a little tiny patch of grass that you're sitting in the blazing sun for 6 hours with no shade.
Sounds like a dream. Get your tan on.
I got a tan. I may also have got heat stroke. So
yeah, that's not ideal.
Yeah,
but that is interesting. I suppose it's not something I ever would have thought of, that you can go in advance and like scan where you want to be. It's kind of similar to Wimbledon. Like when I went last year, yes, you don't have tickets to centre court, so you can't watch that, and you will be watching it on a screen. But you scan in advance the exciting games that are coming up, and you make sure you're on that court and in that seat early enough to watch it. So I suppose it's kind of similar. But we did chat to some other Irish fans about how they got into F1 and why they find it interesting. So let's have a listen to that.
I guess back when I was younger, my granddad he was an engineer, and he loved getting the Grand Prix on. So that was my earliest memory. And my dad kind of won some tickets to the British Grand Prix in 2010, and took me along with him. And I guess there was something about seeing the cars in person, and back then they used to absolutely scream around the track, like the noise would blow your eardrums, and I was absolutely hooked after that. Just for me, it was like the technical kind of excellence required to build these cars, like the little nuances to gain, you know, 100th of a second. I found all that fascinating, and then just the sheer skill to actually pilot these things around at 250 kilometers an hour was just all of that kind of drew me in. I was hooked from then.
I suppose that's quite interesting, because it's not something that really appeals to me at all. The massive vroom that he spoke about, and how loud it is, and how mechanical from an engineering perspective it is. Is that something that drew you into the sport, or was it similar? It was kind of a family member that passed it down?
It wasn't either for me. It was Top Gear. I think
Loved Top Gear
as a kid. I used to get all the annuals at the end of the year, like for Christmas. I used to watch all the Christmas specials where they'd go off to like South America and everything.
They were the best ones.
They were so good.
Who was your favourite guy?
Richard Hammond, of course.
I like Clarkson. Mainly because of Clarkson's farm.
Oh, that's really good. That's back soon, actually. Anyway, so I watched an episode when I was 9 years old. It was just on the telly. And Jeremy Clarkson was interviewing Sebastian Vettel, who at that time was world champion for Red Bull. He had only won one title. He ended up winning 4. And I kind of sat down. I went, okay, you are my favourite driver. And even though as a kid I wasn't that interested in watching the race thing, like you couldn't get me to sit down for 2 hours and watch it. You're 9 years old. I really got back into it when I went into college, because all of my roommates, and I had roommates that were involved in Formula Student, which is like a college society where students kind of build a model F1 car that goes, not full F1 car, but they go and they race it.
Oh, I did not know that existed.
Like a soapbox kind of situation.
Sort of. It's a full car that they build. That's a whole other episode in and of itself. But we all would watch the races together. And that was maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I got properly into it. And then watching Vettel race kind of was that childhood nostalgia element for me. He's retired now. He's retired. Rafa Nadal's retired. He's my favourite tennis player.
What's happening to the sports?
It's ridiculous.
Although I was a Federer fan, as I said last week, so we're at opposite ends of the spectrum.
We are, and we're both equally now kind of searching around for a new tennis player, I guess.
We are, although I watched Oh my God, Alcaraz versus, who's the young American lad?
Tommy Paul?
Ben Shelton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was entertaining now. If all the games were like that, I know Alcaraz still won by a lot, but if all the games were that high tempo and like entertaining and a little bit cheeky, I'd watch them all. Anyway, that was last week's episode. We're back to F1. But that is interesting. And you are still as interested as you were. Your interest hasn't waned.
I was for a little while when Vettel retired. It waned a bit because I think when you have a sporting icon that you were so attached to, like as a child, and when that icon retires, you're kind of like, oh Jesus, all these new lads I don't care about, and I have grudges with half of the older lads because they've crashed into my driver at one stage, or they were rivals at one stage.
Who did you pick? Did you pick a new one?
I did, actually, and it was an Australian driver. I picked Oscar Piastri because
I like him.
He's cool, he's calm, he's collected, and he also kind of pivotally came into F1 the year after Vettel retired, so there's no possibility of a grudge there or anything like that. He's also like just 6 months older than me, so he's kind of basically my age.
That's crazy.
Which freaks me out, but also it's pretty cool.
He's making millions, I'd say, is he?
Oh yeah, of course.
One can dream. But it is interesting of that kind of loop that I feel, just from research and from chatting to people, has happened in kind of the Irish interest in F1. So obviously back in the day, maybe not quite probably when you were younger, but maybe even our parents' generation, you had some Irish drivers, but also you had Eddie Jordan, was it?
Eddie Jordan, who was the team principal and founder of Jordan F1 in the 90s. Such a historic team.
And an Irish connection, I think, which was for a lot of people was kind of what drew them maybe into watching. Yeah. Like when I was chatting to Simon, he also said that, it was that Irish voice that there was no real connection between Ireland and the F1, but then you had this iconic voice with an Irish accent, and suddenly it was like, oh, I'm actually quite interested and I'm drawn to this. Yeah,
even, when Jordan would win races, the constructor, their national anthem gets played on the podiums. So hearing Aron Navian like on an F1 podium, so many clips got shared around after Eddie Jordan passed away earlier on this year of when the Irish national anthem was played for the first time at an F1 race, and it's so powerful, and that engages people. You want to sit down and watch the sport and see what Jordan can do, and they did some, Eddie Jordan did some magnificent things in the 90s with that team. Gave Michael Schumacher his first ever F1 drive, was in a Jordan car, and he turned out okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it did feel like it maybe dropped a little bit, and I think F1 has changed since those times. And I do just want to play Simon again, speaking about maybe why he's not as interested as he was before.
I'm not as dedicated as I was to, I guess, like Formula One. I still check in and watch Grand Prix and qualifying when I have the time and stuff like that. But not quite. I used to consume absolutely everything to do with it. I fell in love with like the sport. It was the actual engineering and the action on the track. And I think for me, Drive to Survive always felt a bit like it was trying to attract, like, and I totally understand it. It was trying to attract, like, I guess, less like sports like focused people into it by showing them the glitz and the glamour and kind of all that side of F1, which I never really liked because I just liked the sport of it, I guess, like as a purist. And I understand that they have to do all these things to make money, but then, like, they went to Vegas and they went to Miami and they, like, it became too much of a circus. It became less about the sport and more about like the money and attracting celebrities and all that. And I think Drive to Survive kind of pandered to that same audience. And then, like, the driver stories were somewhat interesting, but they just didn't hook me. So I couldn't really stick through it. And I guess that's a product of how I feel the sport has kind of gone towards this more marketing standpoint and gotten away from just the pure sporting aspect of it.
That was incredibly interesting, because I think a lot of people would probably say the opposite of, I only know anything about F1 because of Drive to Survive.
Did you watch Drive to Survive? Did it impact how you thought about F1?
I did. I watched the first 2 seasons and I thought they were really good. It definitely was a way to get back into watching the sport and back into getting interested in the sport and the characters in it, and even the team principals are they're presented as really interesting and really controversial. And then I agree with Simon, the more that you watch F1, the less that you enjoy Drive to Survive, especially in the later seasons, because it's very sort of manufactured. When you watch every race, and there's like 20 plus races a season, you know, okay, they're playing an audio that didn't come from that race.
Yeah, I read this that, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, go on.
But apparently in season 3, Man on Fire, which was that really awful one where Grosjean, is that how you pronounce it?
Romain Grosjean, he's French.
Grosjean, sorry, yeah. He had that near fatal crash where he literally went on fire and it was really awful. But Hamilton in that was shown responding to that crash as saying, quote, it's a little scary, it makes you feel vulnerable. And obviously that was really emotional and like all that things. But it turns out he was actually talking about COVID-19 when he said those words. So they had manufactured, the like producers of the show had manufactured it to place a certain audio with a certain video clip. And I think a lot of people went, whoa, I'm not really sure I'm okay with that. And they kind of protected them by being like, oh, it's TV, like it's entertainment, like we didn't make anything up, they said all these things. But like, in reality, if you're like, we can't do that in our work. You're not going to edit audio to make it sound like they've said a certain thing, because that is disingenuous at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think it ties into what people don't like about F1 anyway, in that it's not a real sport. It's fake.
It's not a real sport.
You did that to yourself.
You did.
Go on, Rachel.
What a beautiful segue. Thank you, Eve. No, obviously it's a real sport in that, like, those drivers are like athletes. They're so skilled. I'm not saying that, you know, people have those arguments about what constitutes a real sport and they're not real athletes. They are. But it's just boring. It's all about the money. I mean, everyone's saying whatever team has the best car is going to win. That's how a lot of people have described F1 to me. I'm like, then that's not a sport. That's just like money. It's like the space race. You know, if it's something that, like Wimbledon, you know, you watch maybe once or twice a year, then you go pick up a tennis racket and you can go play after. Like, you can't ever play Formula One. You know, you're never going to get the chance unless you're driving in the side of a car in Modella Park. You're never going to get the opportunity to get involved in it. And it's just so far out of reach and far out of touch of reality.
That is, I guess, the common criticism, and definitely the money thing. It's always been a case. Like, it's not just since Drive to Survive and Liberty Media buying F1 from Bernie Ecclestone that it's become more obvious. Like, the Monaco Grand Prix is a prime example. It's been there since 1950. It might be going somewhere. They don't know if it's going to get renewed, definitely. But that's kind of, it epitomizes. It's about the money and the glitz and the glamour, and it's not for quote unquote normal people. But at the same time, I love the boring parts of it. You have to read to really love F1 and not just Drive to Survive. You need to like the strategy. You need to like the tyre change. Like in the Spanish Grand Prix, there was a solid 50 laps in the middle of the race where nothing happened. There was no overtakes. There was no, you know, no one went off and no one crashed. But what there was two alternating pit strategies where Red Bull were on a 3-stop. You're laughing at me.
You're losing me.
Red Bull were on a 3-stop strategy and McLaren were on a 2-stop strategy. And that, to me, I was sitting on this bank, this hill in Barcelona, 30-degree heat. I had 2 cans of Heineken 0.0 like up against my cheeks to cool down. And I was just
picturing it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just in my head, I was going, okay, so if McLaren pit Norris before Piastri, how will this affect this? And it's...
I can see from your excitement about it. I understand an F1 fan. I can see why it's there.
Yeah.
But I do think this is maybe, as Rachel said, why it's inaccessible in a way. And the fact that Drive to Survive, like, it was shown... Something in the US in 2022, there was a poll that said 53% of adult F1 fans said they got into it through Drive to Survive. And I do think that has been the case, but I wonder whether many of them have actually stuck around, because like that, you go to an actual F1 circuit and there's no glitz. Well, there is glitz and glamour, but there's no dramatization like there is in the show, and there's nobody explaining to you why this is drama. Instead, you're listening to commentators talking about tire degradation and pit stop strategies like you were just talking about, and you're a little bit like, well, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah, it's exactly the point. I think that it's a sport that you can watch better afterwards. Like, it's more exciting to probably watch a Formula One documentary on the previous year's season than a live match.
Yeah,
you
like
know,
the highlights.
when you know the results. I saw a lot of interviews of people saying they liked that it was retrospective because they already knew the results, but it was interesting to see how the results happened. And I understand that.
No, that's a good point. I agree with that.
Let's listen to, though, because Kate, your friend Kate, had a bit of a different opinion on actually maybe Drive to Survive did get her more into the sport.
So I got interested in F1 kind of in a funny way. I saw people on Twitter one day talking about this big F1 race. That race turned out to be Abu Dhabi 2021, which if you follow F1, you know that was the infamous title battle between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. So I just turned it on one day because I wanted to know what these people were talking about. Didn't really have a clue what was going on, and thought it was kind of interesting. I then did what a lot of people do and watched Drive to Survive, got really invested in the drivers as individuals and their personalities and the kind of characters of the sport, and then it just kind of took over my life.
That is interesting that she did get interested in kind of the characters that Drive to Survive showed, because I do think that's what it did really well. It gave you an insight into a real like deep level of these people and these athletes. And although like I think there was a text in on WhatsApp that I asked did they watch F1, and they said briefly before I decided the drivers are mostly wankers. Which like I do think is true, but yet it's very entertaining to watch. And I think that's why it's done really well.
Yeah, do you think people would still watch it if there was no racing involved and it's essentially just a reality TV show?
Yeah.
You know, do most of these people just want to watch the drama and there could be absolutely no racing involved?
I think so, because it's done so well as well in comparison to other sporting shows that Netflix has tried to do.
Yeah, way better.
Yeah, like we were talking about the tennis, the rugby one, on the
golf,
Six Nations, there's golf. Like none of them really took off, whereas I think because this one got into such a deep like personal level and they had so much access, I think like as you always talk about, the human story was there and it's what drew people in.
Yeah, exactly. And in a way that's kind of in a proto fashion, that's why I got interested in the sport, was watching Sebastian Vettel being interviewed, not racing, but interviewed, seeing his personality, his sense of humour. That's what drew me in. So I think that's kind of what's happening now. And it's the same in a slightly different way to why so many people, Irish people, are getting really interested in seeing Alex Dunne, who's in Formula 2, because yes, he's an extraordinary racer, but it kind of matters more that he's Irish and he's extraordinary.
Yeah.
You know?
No, true. And I wonder, is this going to be... So we had the up of Eddie Jordan and excitement of the Irish kind of connection with F1. Then we've had the dip, but then we had the up again with Drive to Survive. Now people aren't so sure. They're a little bit like, oh, Drive to Survive's a bit fake. Not sure I'm that interested in. And also, it's not the same when you actually go and watch F1. But if Alex Dunne, who, by the way, if people don't know, Alex Dunne is a F2 driver and he's Irish. He's from Offaly, is he?
He's from Offaly. He's 19 years old.
Yeah, so young, which
Terrifying.
is crazy. And he's doing incredibly well. He's topping the F2, which doesn't necessarily mean you're guaranteed a spot in the F1. We can talk about that in a second. But I wonder, is this going to increase that interest in Formula One or racing sports again? And we chatted to Shane, who a lot of you will know as he's on Off the Ball breakfast, mostly weekend.
Breakfast on Friday and it's the weekends.
Yeah, so mostly the weekends. But if you haven't heard him, he used to do an F1 podcast, so he's super into it, and he had to give us his 2 cents on the whole Alex Dunne situation.
Oh, if we could have an Irish driver in Formula One, it would just make such a huge difference in terms of interest in the sport in this country as well. I mean, what Alex Dunne has been doing in Formula 2 has been nothing short of extraordinary. Like, he's only 19. He clearly has the attitude of someone who's far a bit older. He actually drove me around the Mondello Park track when he was 16 years of age. I remember for Off the Ball we went out and did a little piece with him, an interview, and took me around in one of these supercars. And you could even tell at 16 years of age this was a guy who had absolutely no fear whatsoever. And I think to compete at that level, that's what you need. You think of the Irish drivers we've had in Formula 1, you know, Derek Daly and John Watson, David Kennedy, Eddie Irvine I suppose is the most famous of all of those. But if Alex could make it to that stage, it would just increase the interest. You think of Barry McGuigan in boxing back in the 80s, Rashida Adeleke, what she's done for athletics. All it takes is one person in a sport to really push to the top tier, and it seriously increases the interest level in that sport. So Keep it going, Alex. And yeah, hopefully we'll have an Irish Formula 1 driver in the next, 2-3 years maybe. That would be absolutely fantastic.
What do you reckon, Rachel? You obviously not a big fan of F1. If there was an Irish driver, do you think you'd get over it? Not get over it, that sounds so harsh, but do you think you'd watch?
I'd listen out to hear how he's getting on.
You wouldn't watch?
And I'd hear the result and I'd say, well done, Alex. Like Shane said, rooting for you. I love how Shane gave a shout out there as if Alex was going to listen to this directly, which we hope you do, Alex. But yeah, it's one of those ones where I'll follow him and I wish him all the best. But if I could get maybe a match of the day situation, like 15-second recap of something exciting, like you said, what was there, like 50 laps at the weekend when nothing happened? I think people will get behind him 100%. People are going to support him. But will those people actually sit down and watch the F2 or the F1 as a result of it? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But I do think, like me, I wouldn't watch it either. But I do think you'd claw more towards those highlights. Yeah,
and I have no doubt that my FYP is now going to be flooded with Alex Dunne and karting and NASCAR and the Indy 500 after this episode.
The amount of paddle last week, I'm still watching so much paddle shots.
It was mad at the Grand Prix. There were so many Irish people there. Like I went there, we brought our tricolour flag and we were waving it every time Alex Dunne came round by our corner. We saw him doing it.
I'm sure he saw that.
Oh yeah. Because so basically, if anyone who doesn't know, in Monaco 2 weeks ago in the Formula 2 race, Alex Dunne qualified on pole. It was amazing, a great pole lap. It's the hardest qualifying circuit of the year. He did incredible. And then there was like a multiple car pile up on lap 1. He got a penalty for it, and he ended up getting a 13th place grid penalty for the F2 sprint race. And then he drove from 19th on the grid to 2nd. He finished on the podium. Crazy. It was incredible. And the atmosphere was fantastic. You know, you'd spot Irish flags everywhere. You'd spot so many Bose jerseys.
Bizarre.
It was incredible. And you really couldn't throw a stone in Barcelona afterwards. After the race, when you go to the train station, the queues are super long. So you just go to the pub and there was like a DJ set and there was a little concert stage set up. And we were sat there waiting for the trains and you couldn't throw a stone before you'd hit an Irish person. So I ended up chatting to quite a few people at the Barcelona Grand Prix, asking them, because they were all wearing different, team jerseys, and none of them were for McLaren, which is the development program that Alex Dunne is in. And so I asked them, would they change their allegiances if he was to get to F1? I see you have a Red Bull jersey on.
Yes.
It's Alex Dunne, he's in F2 right now. If he gets to F1 with McLaren, would you change your loyalties?
Oh, that's a really hard question. I suppose I'd want to support the Irish, so I might if he got in. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I might.
If he was racing against the Red Bulls, you would?
Yeah, if he was Irish, I probably would, yeah.
And so you'd be supporting Alex Dunne if he got to F1?
Oh, 100%.
100%. Even with your Red Bull cap on, you're supporting
100%.
McLaren?
And the Irish.
Would you switch allegiances to McLaren if Alex Dunne got in the F1 seat?
Of course I would, yeah. He's Irish, sure. You have to support the Irish.
You've no team loyalty, just nationality?
No, nationality. For F1, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd support him. But I don't think he's a good chance of getting in, does he?
Oh, why don't you think so?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, so funny. You're going to disagree with me because you've obviously been a Vettel fan for so long, but it does feel to me that F1 fans, the casual F1 fan, isn't necessarily overly connected to a person or a team. They just, and this is like me speaking as someone who'd watch occasionally, more interested in Drive to Survive than the actual thing, but like, I feel like you watch for the entertainment of the cars zooming by and the collisions and everything that goes on, rather than, I really want this person to win.
I feel like maybe if you got into it via Drive to Survive and you're not watching every race every week, that's probably how you'd approach Formula 1. If you're from a country that has a driver in F1, oh my God, you're going to go crazy for that driver.
Would you change allegiances if Alex Dunne got to the F1?
Yeah, I'd support him. If Vettel was still in it, I wouldn't.
Really?
No. I gave too much of my life to support him. I own the caps. I paid too much money on caps and shirts, and it devastated me when he retired. You know, I got to watch him race in Silverstone 2022, and it was in a god-awful Aston Martin car. The qualifying was in the rain. P17, shocking. But he drove all the way into the points, and it was one of the greatest days of my life.
I feel like you do have a real like loyalty to like teams / people you really support, though. Like same with Spurs.
Yeah, I choose a team, or like same with Nadal. You know, I'm ride or die really for team. When you're a kid and you really attach yourself to a team or a player or a driver, I couldn't. But like if Alex, obviously I'm vaguely supporting Piastri now, but if Alex Dunne was in Formula One now, like in the next couple of years, which is looking pretty likely, despite what the man that I interviewed on the train, if you could hear the whizzing in the background, you're on the train back from Monmello.
A couple of pints deep.
Oh, definitely. Me, I can't possibly say.
It's when you get your best stuff, really.
Exactly. I would support Alex Dunne should he get to F1 now. Hypothetically, a couple of years ago, if he was racing against Vettel, well, you know, that's different. But now, 100%.
That's interesting because Simon, who I was chatting to, he was a massive Hamilton fan his whole life. And he was saying that he would switch. Like, kind of the opposite to you. Like, similar with the Vettel.
Hamilton.
His Vettel was Hamilton.
Yeah.
But he just said, I think his time is kind of over and it's time for some new blood. And I did think that was interesting. There's an element of like retiring with grace, maybe retiring when you're
It's like when
on
you
a
have
high.
an older dog and you get a puppy in just to, you know, soften the blow of when the old guy kicks to the curb.
Yeah, that's the exact same. Poor children are going to have nightmares about their dogs dying now. Thank you, Rachel. But we do just want to lastly play Kate again because she had a little bit of an opposite opinion on Alex Dunne.
So I would switch allegiances to Alex Dunne if he made it to F1 for the most part. However, as a longtime Carlos Sainz fan, I think if it came down to a world championship for Sainz or for Dunne, I'm still going to support Sainz. I feel like I have put too much of my life into supporting him, into supporting Sainz so far that I can't just jump ship for the sake of nationality. But of course I would support Alex Dunne as well. Love to see him doing well. But I think if it was him versus my number one, I still have to go with Carlos.
That's the same as what you said.
Yeah, basically. Even though I guess the difference is mine was entirely hypothetical and hers is quite a strong possibility that in the next couple of years Dunne could be racing against Sainz, who's Spanish, by the way. It was his home race. And the less said about how he performed, the better. Wasn't great.
Sorry, Sainz. You just got called out on the pod.
There was a nice big ole that went up every time he passed, like in a very supportive manner that didn't really do much. Sorry, Kate, as well. She's going to listen to this. I'm dissing your favourite driver.
Sorry, Sainz. Sorry, Kate. But I do think, all seriousness, it will be interesting to see if F1 goes on the rise again, if Alex Dunne continues. Because, like, I think he's already done well. And although some people don't really know much about him yet, the more and more he's in the headlines. Like if you Google him now, there's RT articles, there's off the ball interviews. We had him on a couple of months ago. Like it is getting bigger and bigger. And I do think you'll have even the Rachels convinced to at least look him up and see what's going on. And F1 will, not that it's not already popular, but I think it will have a wider reach after that.
Especially in Ireland.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, in the past couple of months, the chances of him getting into F1 have increased spectacularly. You know, if he can stay winning these races, not even necessarily win F2, you know, people who haven't won F2 have still got into F1 and become race winners. You know, he's in a solid development program. He's shown he can pull off spectacular recovery drives. He can win from pole. He can win from outside of the points. You know, I'd be very optimistic, cautiously, but I'd be very optimistic if I was Alex Dunne, and I'd be very excited. And I am very excited as an F1 fan.
And the F2 is, some people like argue that it's not really, doesn't really provide a development path. But actually in 2025, we saw the highest number of F2 drivers join the F1 in a single season. So arguably, there is hope for you, Alex. And we are all rooting for you. Everybody in here, I think, Rachel.
I am. Alex, I'm rooting. Personally, Alex, I'm really rooting for you.
If you're listening, so unlikely. But anyway, this has been Word on the Street. And we can't wait to chat to you with another topic next week.
I think they'll go all the way to the final, to be honest. Yeah. I believe in my county, and I suppose they're good at football. They just have to believe in themselves.
I love playing 12. I love playing 10. I love being on the pitch, to be honest.
Are you confident?
Absolutely not.
No!
Thank you for all the supporters. Thank you for the team. Thank you, France. Merci la France. Merci les baguettes. Merci les croissants. Je vous aime. I love you.